This is a terrifying story about a dead man that happened in early autumn, when it was still relatively warm, at least as warm as it can be at the end of September in our Krasnoyarsk region. One day, it was discovered that Lyoshka had gone missing. That's what everyone called him, young and old alike. Although he was well over 30 years old, he was quite a hopeless person. By age, he was an adult, but he acted more like a child. He never really tried to settle down, never worked a steady job, never tried to start a family. He wasn't ugly, but he was always wandering through the forests and swamps. He had an obsession, a lifelong dream, to find the Devil's Graveyard. The legend was well known in our village. Most people knew about a place in the forest, covered in the bones of dead animals and humans. Anyone who approached this clearing too closely would be overwhelmed by a sense of despair, and life would lose all its meaning. There were also terrifying stories about the ghosts of the dead guarding the Devil's Graveyard. These ghosts, or guardians, were said to have died in this place and now tried to prevent anyone from entering. But of course, you understand, this was just a bedtime horror story. Despite that, there were plenty of people who were into paranormal phenomena, and during my memory there were 2 expeditions to try to find this Devil's Graveyard. As you probably guessed, nothing came of it. Numerous researchers claimed that the clearing should be located in our area, but nobody among the locals had ever encountered it, even though we knew the forest like the back of our hand. Lyoshka, however, spent his entire life searching for the Devil's Graveyard. I don't know why he needed to find it. According to the legends, it was just a barren clearing. But the foolish have their reasons. One day, his mother reported that her son had gone missing. They waited a day in case he came back, but when he didn't, they contacted the police and organized a search. Some of us also went out searching the surrounding areas. People started to calm down, but a few months later, I heard the terrifying story about a dead man from Uncle Anton. He had had a drink and began telling the story of the search. He and the other men went deeper into the forest than usual, forming a wide chain so that everyone could stay in sight of each other. But the further they went, the wider the chain became. At some point, Anton looked around and realized that no one was nearby. He called out but got no response. Then he saw a clearing in the shape of the letter G, devoid of grass, trees, or shrubs. The ground was dug up with bones, feathers, and partially decomposed skeletons scattered everywhere. But what caught Anton's attention wasn't the bones. It was a figure lying in the middle of the clearing. He felt an uncomfortable pang in his chest as he recognized the familiar jacket. When he walked around and saw the pale, lifeless face of Lyoshka, his legs began to tremble. He wanted to approach closer, but suddenly felt dizzy. Without realizing it, he had stepped onto the scorched earth, pinched his nose with his sleeve, and fled from the clearing. He ran to the river, washed his face in the water, and tried to compose himself. He lay on the riverbank, thinking about how far the Kambara River was, about 20 kilometers away. He couldn't have wandered that far. He crossed himself and went back into the forest, trying to avoid the Devil's Graveyard. He took a big detour, walking for half the day, until he finally heard voices. He rushed towards them, thinking they were the men from the village, but when he reached them, he didn't say anything. It seemed like a hallucination. They were heading in the same direction where the clearing had been, but he decided to let them see for themselves. The next day, they reached the Kambara River, but there was no sign of any cursed place. The search was pointless, as the forest was so dense that even 20 helicopters wouldn't have helped. So it turned out that the lost man had found his Devil's Graveyard, and that's where he stayed.